What's going on, everybody? It's Bogo Sports here, and I'm coming to you with a video that I wish I would have made a week ago, but we're going to start now. Better to start sooner rather than later, and at least get the picks going. I'm going to be making my picks for each NFL week, and I'll track my record over the season. Obviously, I missed week one. I gave you a lot of my thoughts on the season before week one, and I hadn't planned on making these picks yet, so I'll give myself a pass there. But I missed week one, and I missed a Thursday night game for this week, but we'll just keep track of my record as the season goes along. So let's get into it. Don't want these to be too long. First game of the day, we have the Bills versus the Raiders, and I have the Bills winning at home. Allen, very turnover happy in the first game against the Jets. Pretty much lost the Bills that game. Especially with Rodgers going out so early, that was a game that they should have won. They probably would have won 8 or 9 times out of 10, but Allen just wasn't at his best. I'm not overreacting too much to it. Allen's going to be a guy that will turn over the ball just with his style of play, but he's got to clean it up, and he can't turn it over like that. The Raiders, they did impress me week one. Jimmy G looked good, although I expected him to look good. He's, in my opinion, a lot better than what a lot of people give him credit for, but they have some nice pieces, but I don't see them beating the Bills on the road. Next game, Bengals-Ravens. This is a very tough one, especially with how bad the Bengals looked in week one, but I am going to go with the Bengals to bounce back and get the victory. I don't think the Ravens look too great either, even though they beat the Texans at home. They suffered some big injuries to their offensive line. Ronnie Stanley, the main guy, and I think Linderbaum is another guy they got hurt. I think that's who it was. And then Dobbins, obviously, out for the year as well. So they suffered some injuries, and I think there's no way that the Bengals have such a pitiful offensive performance again. I expect them to bounce back. I expect T. Higgins to have a catch, and I hope he does for my sake in fantasy. But like I said, this is a very tough one to pick, but I do think the Bengals will come out ahead and get a victory here. Lions-Seahawks, a game that I think people would have been a lot more excited for heading into the season if the Seahawks hadn't looked so confusing last week. They suffered some injuries in the game against the Rams, and they really just didn't play too well. Rams really carved their defense up, and offensively, they were not at their best. They didn't look how they did last year. I'm not going to overreact too much, and that's going to be a theme. You can't overreact too much after week one, but the Seahawks are going to have to prove it to me this week. And with that being said, I still pick the Lions to win this game. I just love the Lions formula. They've got a long week of rest as well. They're going to be at home. I believe they're going to be at home. Let me double check that. They are at home, so I just think this is a recipe for the Lions to go 2-0, and the Seahawks go 0-2. So my Seahawks pick for the playoffs won't be looking great if they lose this game. Okay, Chargers-Titans, two teams that had very interesting week ones. Chargers lost a pretty crazy game to the Dolphins. Their defense it surprises me how bad their defense is. With all the big-name players that they have and Brandon Staley as a supposed defensive wizard as their head coach, they just can't seem to do anything right on defense. Herbert didn't even play his best game last week, but he played very well. The offense put up 34 points. Now, they could be missing Eckler this week. It looks like he is going to be out, but they were very reliant on Joshua Kelly last week, even when Eckler was there. I think Mike Williams and Keenan Allen will get more involved, that Herbert will probably have a big game, 300-plus yards. I do see the Chargers bouncing back and getting this one done, but on the road, at home, Titans now, talking about them at home, Vrabel, great head coach. It's hard for me to pick against him, but I do think the Chargers will get it done. I'm interested to see how the offense looks, how Tannehill looks, because he turned the ball over a bunch versus Saints in week one. And Hopkins potentially may not play tomorrow, so that'll be interesting to see. But overall, I think this will be a competitive game, but I do have the Chargers getting it done. Okay, Bucks-Bears. I was very low on the Bucks heading into the season, and I was pretty low on the Bears too. I predicted them to win 4 games, and I was a little worried about that prediction, but I feel great after week one. They just can't. First of all, their roster is not good, and that was my main reason for picking them to not do well this year. I was just not impressed with their roster. I think people got too caught up in the Justin Fields hype. I'm not here to tell you that Justin Fields isn't good, but I expected a stride in the passing game this year, and it was just as bad in week one as it was last year. So we'll see if that was just an anomaly, a bad start to the year, but I'm not high on the Bears. And the Bucks, impressed. I did mention the Bucks, they still have that Super Bowl roster, many of the pieces of it. It's not completely split up yet. And Baker played good enough. He operated the offense and got the ball to some of his weapons. So I am picking the Bucks tomorrow. This is a game where it could go either way. That could have been a terrible week one for the Bears and a great week one for the Bucks, and it leads the Bears to blowing out the Bucks. Who knows? But I'm going to pick the Bucks here. I expect that them being home is going to be an advantage, and just the fact that they showed a winning formula last week when the Bears didn't show us any semblance of a winning formula against the Packers. Justin Fields got to be able to throw the ball, and he just hasn't been able to do that so far. Okay, Jags Chiefs. I'm going to go for an upset here and pick the Jags. The Chiefs haven't had Kelsey. Looks like he'll play, and we all know his chemistry with Mahomes, so maybe I'm overplaying this, but I could see a slow start, him getting integrated back into the offense. We saw how bad the receivers are without Kelsey. And even though the Jags struggled a bit with the Colts, I was impressed with them week 1. Trevor Lawrence can sling the rock all over the field, and because I picked Lawrence to win MVP, and because I picked the Jags to win the division and ultimately go to the Super Bowl, if you didn't see that video with all my predictions, make sure to go check that out. I feel like I got to go with the Jags here. I got to ride with them, and I'm going to pick them to beat the Chiefs. It's a tall task, especially with the Chiefs being at home. The Jags are at home. Let me just make sure on that. Yeah, Jags are home, so that's actually even more in their favor. But the trio of Lawrence, Etienne, and Ridley is awesome, and it's just going to come down to their defense. Can they get enough stops against Mahomes and Kelsey? So we'll have to see. Okay, moving on. Texans-Colts, battle of bottom feeders. I'm going to take the Texans here. This is another one where I really don't know what's going to happen. I think it's safer to pick the Texans because I like DeMeco Ryans. Stroud looked solid. They have a few weapons on offense like Nico Collins and Dameon Pierce. Defensively, it's very questionable, and the same can be said for the Colts. Richardson looked good last week, running the football as well. So this game, anything can happen. I'm going to take the Texans though because I think they're a bit of a safer pick. Okay, Giants versus my Arizona Cardinals. I have the Giants here, and as far as I'm not a big bettor, but I do a pick 'em with the spreads, and I feel like the Giants spread is I think it's -4. Where I'm looking, and that is just a lock in my opinion. The Cardinals, we all know how terrible they are, and they actually put up a contest against Washington last week, which I'll get in. That'll factor into another one of my picks later. I just think this is a prime opportunity for the Giants to bounce back. They had a horrendous showing, but I still think they're a good team. I still think they can recover from that. It was one game. You just burn the tape and go out there and get right this week against the worst team in the NFL. I think that's how it's going to play out. 49ers, Rams, I was low on, and I'm starting to regret that. They looked very good last week, even without Cooper Kupp, and how limited their roster is. They found ways to make Puka Nacua a beast, and Tutu Atwell, and Stafford looked great. Kind of reminded us who he was. So I think this game will be closer than maybe the line suggests and what people are thinking, but I do think the Niners will get it done and move to 2-0. Cowboys-Jets, this would have been way better if Aaron Rodgers didn't get hurt 5 plays into the season. I think the Cowboys defense does some horrible things to Zach Wilson, and I do see them getting it done. Their offense could struggle a bit because we saw how great the Jets defense was last week, forcing turnovers against Allen and just being all over the field. But I do think it'll probably be at least a 2-score win for the Cowboys. Broncos-Commanders. I mentioned how the Commanders performed last week against the Cardinals would factor into this pick. I got the Broncos winning this game. They didn't look great against the Raiders. Their offense just looks really limited. They don't have any big play potential with that offense, where in the past you'd see Russ hitting all these big shots to Lockett and DK at the end of his tenure with the Seahawks. That's the one thing that scares me, but I was not impressed at all with Howell. I think this could be another 17-16 game, or it could be a 2-score game for the Broncos. If they play to their potential, I think the Broncos get this done, and pretty easily. So I do think the Broncos have a good defense, and I just don't see the Commanders moving the ball against the Broncos defense. So I'm going to give them the win. Big game this week, Dolphins versus Patriots, one of the best afternoon games, probably the best afternoon game, I would say. I'm going to go with the Dolphins. It's hard for me because I was high on the Patriots heading into this year. I loved how they played last week against the Eagles, even though they went down early and started terribly, 16-0. I loved how they played. They could have won the game if Boutte got his feet in and made the catch, shoulda, coulda, woulda. But I'm very high on the Patriots, but I was also high on the Dolphins. And last week's performance made me even higher on them. Tua, I've never thought he's an elite quarterback, but he doesn't have to be. Mike McDaniel knows how to utilize the weapons that he has in Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle. And it's going to, as good as that Patriots defense is, it's hard for me to see them slowing down both Tyreek and Waddle. Maybe they take out Tyreek, which I don't see happening, but maybe they limit him. Well, now you got Jalen Waddle. It's going to be hard. the one thing I will say is if Judon and Uche start hitting Tua, then that could be a different story, but we'll have to see how that plays out. I am going to take the Dolphins to get the win here. So that would make the Patriots 0-2 even. And I think it'll be a close game, so it could be 0-2 and two good performances. Okay, moving to Monday night, we have two Monday night games. Saints versus Panthers. On my spreads pick, this is the other one I think is a lock. The Saints were -3. I see them going out here and dominating the Panthers. It is in Carolina, but I don't think that'll make much of a difference. Saints looked solid last week. I think they're only going to get better as the season goes along, as Carr gets comfortable in the offense, as they get pieces back, as Thomas gets more acclimated to playing football again, and then in a couple weeks they're going to get Kamara. I just think the Saints are only going to rise as the season goes along. Panthers looked absolutely terrible against the Falcons offensively, and I don't see any way this is a close game. So I'm definitely picking the Saints there. And then Steelers-Browns. So Steelers, if you watch my video, I am crazy high on them this year. And they're the pick after week 1 that looked the worst. Now, like I've been saying in this video, it was week 1, but still, not super confidence-inspiring performance from the Steelers. They got absolutely stomped by the 49ers. I'm picking them to beat the Browns. And the Browns looked great against the Bengals, held Joe Burrow to 82 passing yards. Now, offensively, Watson did not look good. He looked like he did last year. But as an overall team performance, the Browns played really well. So it's kind of a crazy pick to say, hey, I got the Steelers winning this game and the Browns losing after both of their performances last week. But I'm going to go with the Steelers at home on Monday night. I think similar to the Giants, you kind of burn the tape on week 1 and then start new in week 2. And I think being a divisional matchup, being that this is probably going to be a slower game, the Browns don't have nearly as an explosive an offense as the 49ers do. I'm going to pick the Steelers to get it done and bounce back. So just to run through my picks again, I have Bills winning over the Raiders, Bengals over the Ravens, Lions over the Seahawks, Chargers over the Titans, Bucks over the Bears, Jags knocking off the Chiefs in an upset, Texans over Colts, Giants over Cardinals, 49ers over Rams, Cowboys over Jets, Broncos beating the Commanders, Dolphins going on the road and beating the Patriots, Saints going on the road on Monday night and beating the Panthers, and then the Steelers bouncing back and beating the Browns. Those are my picks. We'll see how I do after this week. Hope you guys enjoyed, and let me know your picks below. Peace.